Hi everyone, this is Professor Benjamin, and you have made it through week 1 of this course. Well, you've almost made it through week 1 of this course. So each week, usually at the end of the week, I send out a roundup, and it may be in this video type format, or sometimes it's actually typed out. And you'll find that under your announcement sections in Canvas, so I upload that every week. Some weeks, of course, it may be a little bit more challenging, but I really do try and round up the week and then kind of give you a preview of what's coming up next week. So many of you did a great job on your initial forum posts this week. Just a couple housekeeping items. Number 1, initial posts are always due by Tuesday. Now this week we had a little bit different because the class started on Tuesday, so I wanted to give you a little bit more time. But from this point forward, all initial posts in this class are due by Tuesday, 11:59 p.m., and you will respond to a fellow classmate by Thursday, 11:59 p.m. Okay, so make sure you write those deadlines down in some, I don't know, in your phone, or if you use a traditional planner, please do so. And then at the end of each week, we have a quiz on the chapter rating. So that is always due by Sunday, 11:59. So this week, on Sunday, you'll have your first quiz due, and that is on the introduction reading, or chapter 1, which is, this is geography in the textbook. So make sure that you take care of those items. Just a couple other little reminders. Initial posts always need to be at least 300 words in length. They should have paragraphs, proper grammar, all of that kind of normal repertoire for posts. You should also include sourcing in your posts, and of course make sure you use sources that I have given you. You may go a little bit outside if you would like to, but you have to at least use one source I have given you in the module. The other thing is that please refrain from using I statements, and the reason we do this is because we want to take people's personal opinions out. So what happens is when someone responds back, they don't feel like you don't feel like you're being attacked. Your personal opinions aren't being attacked. So you can make the same comments without using the word I. You could just say yes, no, and here are the reasons why. Instead of saying I believe or I think, instead just say yes, and here are the reasons why. Okay, like if you're going to take a stance on one side or the other of an aisle. A lot of you did a great job this week on the content. Oh, also, just real quick, response posts need to be at least 200 words. So if you could, please make sure you take care of those issues before your initial posts that are due on Tuesday. So this week we covered This is Geography. A lot of you totally understood the fact of the idea that maps distort the world. A lot of you had really great examples of unique aspects. There was a really good example of how, like, diffusion, Chick-fil-A, which is a Christian organization, will globalize into specific areas, and one of the reasons is that they can then bring their Christianity with them when they go there, so it's almost like a missionary type trip, and so a missionary type, organization that now is in a specific country. So we need to think about those things. Who are the political backers to some of these, or owners to some of these corporations that go into specific areas, and what is their intent when they go there? Is it to sell their products? Well, probably, but it's also may have an underlying reason to their diffusion to these specific areas. So why are places similar? So we there was a couple things in the textbook that deal with that. Also just the plain terminology that you need to know about decay, distance decay, all of that kind of stuff. So make sure that you understand environmental determinism and possibilism. So that's whether the physical environment affects humans or humans have actually altered the physical environment. So make sure you understand those terms. A lot of you did a great job this week on your posts. Also remember that there's only a specific amount of people that can answer each question, and then that question becomes out of play. So starting this week, I'll take a look at that and make sure that each person can only respond to those questions a specific amount of time. Okay, and then once that happens, it's out of play. So if you're a late poster, like on a Tuesday night, you need to go in and see which questions have already been answered. And then if they've already been answered, I think it's 9 times, then you have to pick a different question. Okay, so if you like a specific question, then you need to get in early. Okay, so that was last week. I actually want to move forward to this week because we have a lot to do this week. So if you look under the modules for this week, we have a couple things due. And I like to jump right into the semester because Thanksgiving week will be the last week of the semester, last week of this term, really. So we don't have that much time between now and what we call our Thanksgiving holiday. So it's really important for us to get moving in this class so that we meet deadlines. And I like to, of course, front load my classes. And then at the end of the semester, we're kind of riding a hill down, whereas a lot of other classes are ramping up towards the end of the semester. Also, before we do anything, make sure you read about this course project. I know I talked about it in the video on the home page, but please make sure you start looking into the course project and understanding the expectations, because I think in about 2 weeks your proposal is going to be due. So you're going to have picked a topic for your final paper. So make sure you start reading through this information here, and that'll help you pick out your course project. I'll send out a video within the next week or so talking about it, but I think it's really important for you to start looking ahead. So this was chapter 1, this was session 1. Now we move into session 2, which is population. So this week you have due an initial post by Tuesday, a response post by Thursday. You'll have a quiz, but you also have your first assignment due for this class, which is population. And I actually made a video right here of the population assignment. So if you have any questions about the population assignment, hopefully this video answers your questions. There are examples here of what I'm looking for in terms of your population assignment. And so make sure that when you complete your assignment due by next Sunday, 11:59, that you have met the requirements for the class. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I've already made a video on it. I actually want to just delve into the population description here and a little bit of the articles that are below. So you'll see here under the forum, you'll see some questions here. D North, I see you've already posted, but if you remember, I think I sent you a little comment that I would like you not to put it into a doc format here. If you could just copy and paste that, that would be great. So the One China Child policy was put into effect to kind of curb population growth, because of course that's one of the big things throughout the world now is, the humans are overpopulating the earth, or actually we're using too many resources, so we're going to meet our carrying capacity at some point. And when that happens, we could, if we overshoot our carrying capacity, then we may have a huge die-off of the human population. Okay, so I want you to read about the One China Child policy, which was an idea to curb population growth by placing an excess tax on individuals who had more than one child. And there were a lot of social issues with that, because in China, males were looked at, of course, as more important than females because, number one, they carried on the family name. Number two, they worked, right? So they were the head of the household. And number three is that they were actually a social security system. So when parents became old, they moved in with the son and his family. So what happened is that because individuals were taxed heavily for having more than one child, they wanted to have a boy as their first child, because then maybe they couldn't afford the tax and then they wouldn't have any more children. So what wound up happening was there were a lot of females that were either aborted or they were left kind of just randomly and are now found in orphanages. And so now there's a huge disparity in sexes in China. So there's a huge boom of males and not as many females, which has now led to a whole other host of social problems. Also, China, of course, wants to grow its economic capabilities, and while doing that, they don't have the population anymore to do that because they had curbed their population growth. So there's a lot of social consequences, and there's a wonderful document under the course information session that talks about that. The other thing is, why will the U.S. experience zero to negative population growth, and can declining populations such as the U.S. population lead to extreme political shifts? So France is a really good example of this, and you can look into that further on the internet, but the U.S. population is actually decreasing significantly. And once the baby boomer population passes away, we will actually be almost in negative population growth, because for every 2 people, only 1.7 children are being born. And so that means that we are shrinking in our population. This has led to college enrollments to decline. It has led to a lot of things. It will lead to a Social Security crisis in the future. And that means that there's not as many people paying into the system, but too many people, the baby boomer generation, are pulling from the system. And that is why you'll hear a lot of people say that my generation and your generation may no longer be able to get our Social Security checks because too many people have pulled from the Social Security system. and there's not as many people putting into the Social Security system. So there's a lot of reasons why this happened. Number one, freedom of women in the United States is a big deal. So education of women, women in the workforce, right? So they kind of put back having children till a later date. So the fertility rate of the female has changed, has actually gone up, gone down. So we don't have as many children because we start to have children at a later time in our lives. The other thing is that childcare costs in the United States are astronomical compared to a lot of countries, so that deters people from having children. So there's a lot of reasons for that. Okay, why did Thomas Malthus fail to foresee his prediction? And the article for Thomas Malthus is under the module. It is a long and tedious article, but I just really want you to zero in on why was he wrong and why maybe potentially he could be right in the future. And hint, a lot of it has to do with agriculture production. So take a look at that. Many predict that the next die-off of the human race will be due to a pandemic, while others think it will be due to lack of resources such as water. So I want you to explore this. A lot of this population session talks about epidemics and what's going to happen in the future, etc. And so I want you to look into that and try and make an educated choice as to what you think it is and why and the reasons why. And so I think it's really important for you to understand these important terms that we're going to talk about in population, and that's why I have you do that assignment. So what is life expectancy? What is death rate? What is birth rate? What is a demographic transition? And so I want you to look into what that means and why it's really important in terms of us understanding where countries are in terms of demographic transition and where they're headed in the future, because this is really going to be able to determine how we allocate resources in the future. And then, of course, I want you to look into infectious diseases and other things that have happened throughout human history. Yes, while our medical services have increased in certain parts of the world, and that's what has allowed our population to increase, there are a lot of other parts of the country that do not have access to medical care or sanitation like the United States, and that has curb their population growth. A lot of children die. So you'll actually see in those countries maybe their infant mortality rate is a lot higher than the United States, and that's because of lack of medical care, lack of sanitation, lack of access to medical care, all of that kind of stuff. So make sure you take a look into that. And I think that's about it. So you're going to move through the population session this week, and then I'll see what you write. I'll comment on it, and then I'll meet back with you next week. I'll send out another roundup as we head into the third session, the third week of this class. Of course, feel free to reach out if you have any questions on the population assignment. Of course, try and do that before rather than later. Sundays are a little bit rough for me, so due to my children's commitments. So if you could reach out to me before that, maybe during the week, if you have any questions with the population assignment, that would be fantastic. So I look forward to your posts this week, and I hope you take into consideration some of my housekeeping items that I talked about in terms of initial and response posts. Have a fantastic week.